Hello, listeners. This is Valeria Rosnav, and I welcome you all to the 13th episode of the Rejected Pre-Med podcast, a space for honest conversations about rejection and resilience. As I often say on this podcast, rejection is not the end, it is often redirection. While it may sting in the moment, it can lead to powerful personal and professional growth. In today's episode, we have a very special guest, Dr. Rebecca Malhi. From her birthplace in India to England and finally to Canada, Dr. Rebecca Malhi has been steadily moving westwards. Rebecca has a degree in computer science and worked for many years as a programmer and systems analyst in the Calgary oil and gas industry. But when she was laid off from her job, Rebecca was devastated. But the layoff made her reevaluate her life and to ask, what do I really want to do? Rebecca returned to academia to eventually complete a PhD in psychology and indulge in her passions for research and teaching. Until 2022, Rebecca worked as a research associate at the Cummings School of Medicine at the University of Calgary. And Rebecca continues to be involved in research, publishing academic papers, and supervising and mentoring students. She currently holds appointments as an adjunct assistant professor in the Department of Psychology and the Department of Community Health Sciences at the University of Calgary. In 2022, Rebecca founded her company, Lumina Writing Services, with the goal of helping clients improve the quality of their creative, academic, or business writing. But she noticed that many clients were struggling with broader challenges such as overwhelm, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and time management. In 2025, so this year, Rebecca launched her podcast, The Joyful Scholar, to help anyone, not just students and academics, develop skills to deal with stressful life situations that often lead to burnout and lack of joy. Rebecca is thrilled to host a podcast where she can share the latest research on such important topics, as well as lessons learned from her years in academia and the business world. Through her company, Rebecca is also available to provide virtual guidance, accountability, and coaching support to empower clients to achieve their goals and to achieve their dreams. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me on this show, on this podcast. I'm so pleased to have you here, and I'm very, very excited to dive into your perspective. I want to start off by first asking, how do you feel about doing today's episode?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast, Valeria. I'm really excited to be here. I think that your podcast and mine have very common things in common. And it's just very exciting for me to come and talk to you about the various things like resilience and imposter syndrome, perfectionism.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really excited to dive in with you into those under-discussed themes that are usually under-discussed. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? What motivated you? What drew you? What inspires you about social psychology, medical education, and academia in general? What do you love about it?
Well, I think that part of it is the desire to help people. And I do feel that education is very important. I feel that research is very important. And I think that if we look at the common issues that people have that are often not addressed, because society tends to encourage some of these behaviors that are really not good for us. You know, we tend to reward people for overworking or for being overly competitive. We as human beings are limited, right? We have limited physical and mental resources, and to put too much of a strain on them is very difficult on us, especially over the long term. So one of the things that I really enjoy about psychology is that you learn about people and behaviors and people in context, but you also learn about yourself. And I think that's that sort of self-reflection is important, and I find it very satisfying. Well, as you know from the bio, I didn't start off studying to go into psychology or medical education. In fact, that was probably one of the last things on my mind.
Right.
I got a Bachelor of Computer Science from Concordia University, and I started off as a programmer and systems analyst. In fact, my first job was actually working in information technology, IT, at Air Canada in Montreal. So after that, my family and I, we moved to Calgary. I got a job as a programmer and systems analyst in the oil and gas industry for a big company.
Right.
This was during the boom times. And then very quickly, though, the economy became very unstable and the boom went to a bust, and all the oil companies really pulled back on their hiring and their, the number of employees, and the layoffs started. For 13 years, I hung on in the oil and gas industry at a time when there were layoffs every few months. And I estimate that over 13 years, I survived about more than 25 layoffs.
Uh-huh.
It's a period of great stress and anxiety because you really are not sure. Should I buy a house? Well, I'm not sure that I can afford it if I'm laid up. Should I do this? Should I go on vacation? Well, if I go on vacation, they may think that they can do without me. So maybe I shouldn't go on vacation. A lot of stress around having a job, but not sure that you're going to be able to keep that job.
Right.
And then eventually one day my number was up. I got that pink slip and I was laid off. As I mentioned in the bio, I was devastated. It felt like the end of my career. What am I going to do? Do I have to go interview again? And, what about my references? Do I really want this? So it was a stressful time being laid off. And especially, you do have that sense of rejection. Well, it was very difficult. But the good side was that it all worked out for the best. And really, looking back now, I would say that being laid off and having that rejection and having that experience of rejection was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I had to really think about what I wanted to do. Do I want to continue in this industry? Do I want to look outside the oil and gas industry because it's so unstable? Do I want to stay as, in the information technology area? So after some really hard thinking, that is when I decided to go back to academia. Though I didn't actually want to do a degree, I just took one course to guide me over, and it's like, oh, okay, I've always been interested in psychology. Well, I'll take Psychology 101.
Uh-huh.
And even then, it was like, oh, I've been out of school for a long time. How am I going to be a student again? Is everybody in my class is so much younger, and they're used to learning. I'm not used to learning anymore. How am I going to do this? And then after the first exam, and I think I got 99%, it was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to have trouble. I found psychology so interesting that I thought, oh, I think I could actually make a career out of this. I didn't know as what, but I thought I want to learn more. I want to learn more. And then once I finished my bachelor's, there was still that I want to learn more. I don't think I've learned enough. So I did my master's. And then at the end of that, I thought, I still have more. I want to do my PhD. And then I stopped.
That's good. There must be a stopping point somewhere, right?
Exactly. I thought, oh, I could do a double degree. I could do this. But my family said, no, you really need to get a job. But on top of getting a degree in psychology, I also found that the experience of going back to school and starting a new career gave me some unanticipated benefits, I guess you could call it. Because one of them was that sense of self-efficacy. I found that, I did something really hard. I, sort of jumped off a ledge, because I didn't know what I was going to do at the end of this. So I had this leap of faith that I was going to, at the end, come out with a new career and do something that I really enjoyed. And so that, that sense of doing something hard and succeeding at it gave me that sense that, oh, if I can do this, I can really do anything. And that was that was really very boosting for my ego, which is being quite shattered by the
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example of how resilience is built through such difficult situations. You had this experience, this bad experience, well, perceived to be bad experience, and it sucks because you don't know what are you going to do next? What's your next step? But you trusted yourself, eventually pushed through and tried something different, and that builds resilience. And also there's this saying I like to say in the podcast, rejection is redirection. And for that rejection, the layoff was redirection for you, and it helped you in the long run. And like you said, you already summed it up really nicely, how there were these unanticipated benefits, how you gained self-efficacy. And I find that self-efficacy and resilience are very closely related to each other. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, because so many times we are tempted to suppress all the difficult things we experience, but there is a learning opportunity there. There is something to get out of that, whether it's in terms of professional growth, whether it's in terms of personal growth. And you had so much courage to pivot and try something different. No one said it was easy. And you shared that you were devastated. And thank you for sharing that, because I mean, different people have different experiences, but can surely feel at times devastating. I felt devastated when I didn't get into medicine, and I was similar to you. I was starting like, what do I really want to do? Is this something I want to keep pursuing, or I want to try something different? So I really appreciate you sharing that, because it shows how sometimes it just helps to face head on with what you just experienced, not suppress it, see how you can learn from it and what you can get out of this. And that is through trying something either different or to keep persevering at it, whatever your situation is. But I really appreciate you sharing all of that. Obviously, it worked out because, you're successful at what you do. And now you're helping other students through platforms like podcasts, The Joyful Scholar.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, I also have a saying I tell people in terms of resilience, but, you will be hitting bumps in the road, and the bumps help you to jump higher.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that was definitely, you go along very smoothly, and then all of a sudden you hit this bump, and it seems like a terrible thing, but then it sends you off into a higher level of
Yeah.
experience back, and you think, that bump really was good for me.
Yeah. You don't see it in the moment. Sometimes you have to look back and see, oh, wow, this helped me. When did you know for sure for yourself that what happened was for the best? Do you remember that moment of realization? It's just like, wow, I'm so glad this layoff happened to me. Or were there times when you were still missing that part?
I did actually feel that, because I was having so much fun. I was learning a lot. Intellectually, it was just so stimulating for me to be taking these courses and to be learning this, and meeting people who were also curious and dedicated. And I realized that, for several years, I had not been happy in my job. It was a paycheck. I did my job. I did it well, but I didn't really enjoy it. There's not a lot of variety. There was certainly not a lot of learning. You did the same thing over and over. There was nothing really new. And I could probably have spent the next 10 years doing exactly the same thing. Whereas when I went back to school, I'm doing different things all the time. At the beginning, I was experimenting with all different types of psychology to see which was most interesting to me and what I could see myself doing for years to come. I wasn't going to change careers over and over. I wanted to make sure that this time it would be something that would have legs, that I'd be able to continue to work at. And so I learned quite early that it had been a really good thing for me. I mean, I missed the paycheck. Of course, I missed the paycheck.
Yeah.
But, I was making up for it by having such a happy life that I didn't really miss it in terms of, so now I'm a little poorer than I was, but I'm so much more satisfied. And that satisfaction, I think, is really important. You can be making a lot of money and hate your job and hate the people that you work with, hate your industry, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I was, less income, but much more happy.
I was just talking about this on a different episode of the podcast, how there's all this buzz around success, but success, like monetary wealth, is one part of success. And sure, that can be very important, but also there's internal kind of wealth that you can have, like fulfillment, this knowing that you go look at yourself in the mirror, knowing that what you're doing, you like what you do and it brings you joy. And there's so much happiness that comes with that, like you were saying.
Yes.
So listen to what you like and find out what it is that you like and go with that. Even if it's not your primary job, find ways to incorporate that into your life. So,
yeah. I agree. I think that, continuing to follow your passion, incorporating even a little bit of that passion into your life will make your life a lot more satisfying.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to switch gears a little bit. I want to know a little bit more about the Joyful Scholar podcast. What is the premise behind it? How did you even think to start this podcast? And how is it now meant to help people?
Okay. So as you mentioned, it's very new and it developed from my company, Lumina Writing Services, which helps people improve their written communication. One of the things that I noticed from my clients is that writing problems was just part of the issue. And quite often they had broader life challenges, such as stress, time management, and procrastination, and so on. And I wanted to help my clients with these issues. So I help people by providing tips and strategies to help them with some of these life issues, and I draw on my own experiences and what I found helpful, but I also draw on research, and I do quite a lot of research for my podcast episodes to come up with not just what worked for me, but what the experts say are best practices. And I do include the references in my podcast description because, I can only touch on some of the top tips, a lot of research out there. And if people are really interested in following up, then I give them the references so that they can actually go to those papers.
Yeah, thank you for bridging the gap, because so often I hear that, and you might disagree with me on this completely, but so often there's a gap between academia and the strategies that may work, like in terms of psychology, how to better have time management or how to manage imposter syndrome. But there's a gap between academia and it being brought into practice. And by doing this podcast, I believe that you bring this knowledge and make it much more accessible than, especially if the person is not in academia, like having to read these research articles. It's just like, well, because there's a lot of what's called pop psychology, and a lot of it sounds good, but not all the time it works. So it's nice to really dive into that research and actually share what works in a very accessible language for people to understand from all backgrounds, not just those in academia who know the psychology terms. So I feel like that sets a Joyful Scholar in a very important role. No pressure, of course, but I feel like that's the good work that it does, and I appreciate it, and I love listening to the episodes too.
Well, thank you, and I try to keep them fairly short.
Yes, thank you. And in the Joyful Scholar podcast, you address quite a bit the idea of perfectionism and imposter syndrome, which I think are in a way both forms of self-rejection, where we can feel like we're rejecting ourselves through that, because perfectionism, there's a root feeling that what we're doing is not enough, so it has to be perfect. For imposter syndrome, feels like we're not deserving of whatever accolades or whatever wherever we are, where we might not be deserving of that. So in a way, it is a form of self-rejection. With your work with students, how prevalent did you find perfectionism and imposter syndrome to be, especially among those pursuing higher education and recent graduates? How prevalent is it?
That is a hard question to answer, actually. And the reason is that perfectionism and imposter syndrome are not actually psychiatric disorders.
Right. Right.
So there is no assessment for them. There's no test to say, yes, you have it, or no, you don't have it. So it's mostly self-reported. You say, oh, I feel like a fraud. And that's it's likely you have imposter syndrome, or, I always feel that people are judging me, or, it's just not good enough. I'm not good enough. Then you probably do have that. I did make a note here because I did look for prevalence rates, and there's very little hard and fast numbers around imposter syndrome and perfectionism. In terms of perfectionism, a 2017 study, over 41,000 students in 3 countries, found that perfectionism was quite common among young people, and it was increasing. The authors were a little concerned that there are various types of perfectionism. There's perfectionism of yourself, there's of others. Also, you think that other people are demanding things from you, and all 3 of those facets of perfectionism were increasing in younger people. And the authors found that it was often parents who were putting a lot of pressure on their kids. Educational institutions were putting a lot of pressure to succeed, and not just succeed, but like be brilliant at things. And also social media, because we compare ourselves to other people, and other people always seem to be better.
Right.
So, of course, it's very curated, right, on social media. You always tend to put your best foot forward on social media. So it's an artificial image that is out there. But people see it and they think, oh, well, see, they have everything together. How can I compete with that? I'm an imposter because I can't handle all of this, but they have a perfect life, So perfectionism is quite common and is increasing. And imposter syndrome, and this is not going to be a surprise to you, Valeria, but it's especially prevalent in medicine and healthcare.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one study found that over 60% of medical students experienced imposter syndrome. That is a very high rate. And women are more likely to feel that they're fraudulent and they somehow lucked into getting into some prestigious job.
Yeah. Do you want to dive maybe a hypothesis of why maybe do you think women might be experiencing more?
I think because the competition, there's quite a lot of competition. Women generally have to work harder to get equal results from men as well. And I think also they found that racialized minorities also had prevalence rates of imposter syndrome as well. So I think the competition often makes you feel like you don't belong. Maybe there were very external factors and not internal factors that accounted for you getting into that position, like medical school.
Yeah. Interesting from a scientific perspective, sad from a human perspective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it is, one of the things about imposter syndrome and perfectionism is that they have similar roots. And I agree with you that there's, their forms manifesting as self-rejection. But I think there's an underlying fear of failure as well that is in both of them, because perfectionists fear that people are going to be judging them if they're less than perfect.
Right.
And imposter syndrome, someone with imposter syndrome fears that they will be found out, that they don't deserve what they have. And in both cases, high achievers are the ones who often struggle with perfectionism and imposter syndrome.
Which is ironic because high achievers actually, they work for so much and they get a lot of things, but it seems like there's this never ending, but it's not enough.
Yeah, there's a real cost to it. And, in academia, of course, there is that you have to be a high achiever in order to get into grad school, in order to get scholarships, in order to get tenure, all of these things. So, I mean, the system is set up to really encourage perfectionism, things like imposter
Wow.
syndrome.
Which is terrifying.
It is.
How would you suggest we move past feelings of fear of failure, this self-rejection, like imposter syndrome, perfectionism? How do we prevent it from holding us back, from holding us from achieving our potential, and find joy in the academic and professional environments we find ourselves in? Like, where should we start?
Well, things like perfectionism and imposter syndrome, in particular perfectionism, the roots start very early because it's often from childhood. You know, you're told that, you know, that wasn't good enough, and, you know, you have to make the team, and you have to, you know, have the grades, and if you don't, then it's not just it wasn't good enough, it becomes you are not good enough, right? So I think the counterbalance to that self-rejection that I'm talking about is self-acceptance. And I think you really have to work and practice on ways to accept yourself, to really say, no, I am good enough. I do deserve to be here. And one of the things to start is to not have the negative self-talk. And I think that's really important. The way we talk to ourselves is our relationship with ourselves.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. And, you know, we say things to ourselves that we would never say to somebody else. You know, can you imagine saying to, you know, your best friend who's made a mistake, oh, you're so stupid,
Yeah.
what were you thinking? How could you do that? You know, but we say that to ourselves. We say that all the time. So we don't need to put up with our brains giving us this kind of negative talk. If you do have thoughts like that, I think one of the best things to do is you have to remind yourself that you are a human being. Human beings are flawed. We do make mistakes. But that doesn't mean that we're bad people. It doesn't mean that we're undeserving or unworthy. It just means that we made a mistake. And we acknowledge that and we move on. You know, I think that's one of the things. And stop saying to yourself, I'm a bad person because I made a mistake.
It sounds so simple. And most of us understand it in theory. But and I always say this, it's one thing understanding self-acceptance and self-compassion in theory, but another, it's actually live it and practice it on an internal level, on an emotional level, at your body. It's a whole other thing. So, so simple, but not so simple.
It's because it's unconscious, right? We do a lot of our thinking unconsciously, and it's just, you know, from our childhood, we have these patterns and scripts of talking to yourself like that. But that's when you have to involve the conscious mind and make it a practice to, when you catch yourself saying negative things to yourself, it's like, hey, wait a second, you know, I'm not stupid and I do deserve, the things that come to me. And a couple of other things is keep tracking your achievements. I think that's an important thing to do too. And so when your thought is, you know, I can't do this, I'm never going to be able to do this, it's like, hey, wait a second, you know, I did do it. The negative thoughts are in the moment, right? We have a mistake and our negative thoughts come in the moment. And at that point, we forget all of the history that we've had of all the successes, all of the things that we've done. And so in my case, if I, you know, forget to attach a file to an email, you know, it's like, oh, that was so dumb. I was so stupid not to do that. It's like, hey, wait a second. I went back to school.
Yeah.
You know what?
Exactly.
Something like missing an attachment is no big deal. So I just sent a follow-up email saying, oops, sorry about that. Here, the email with the attachment. And doesn't make me unworthy, doesn't make me an evil or a bad person. I just made a mistake. And so I find the keeping the track of your achievements and celebrating them, going, woohoo, I finished that scholarship application, and, it's sent off. It took me a long time, but I did it, and it's the best that I can do.
Yeah, you're right. And for me as a recovering perfectionist, it's always easy to like, yeah, it's always easy to like do a task and you're like, yeah, well, whatever, I was going to do it anyways. And you don't even give yourself credit along the way. But I hear it so much, and various therapists say this too, like give yourself credit along the way,
Yes.
even for little things. It's like give yourself credit for drinking water, like on a daily basis. Like this is good for you. And it's just, and like you said, it's a habit. And when we have that negative self-talk entrenched in us from childhood, sometimes we have to get our conscious to interfere with our unconscious negative self-talk and readjust those habits and rebuild those patterns. As torturing as that may be sometimes and daunting, but it's worth it. I attest to that. Like for me, this year has been a huge personal growth year because I was really anxious, and even when I was writing MCATs and applying to med school, I was this anxious person, and I was a good person. I pride myself on that. I think I'm good. I do what I can with integrity. So I was that person, but I was really anxious and always stressed out. And because of that perfectionism, because of that, if I just missed that one letter, I'm not worthy of this. And I had this thought, and even, like you said, it was in the unconscious. So I had to go and rework that pattern, which takes time, but it's so worth it. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing. A list of achievements is a great, like actually writing it out, I think is helpful. I think I tried doing that once when I was a teenager, and I think that really boosted my ego back then, and it really helped me. So thank you for that advice. We are soon coming to an end of the episode, but I was wondering if you have any last key points to share with the audience before we wrap up. What are the main takeaways that listeners should get out of this episode?
Well, I think that we need to have self-care. And I think that's something that, again, we don't do often enough. I think we need to reward ourselves for successes, and find moments of joy and encourage, have more moments of joy. Whatever we do that we really enjoy, do more of. And the things that we don't necessarily need to do, I mean, we, as recovering perfectionists and people pleasers, we tend to have a lot of other people's priorities as well. And that can cut down on the time that we have to do our own priorities. But I think, having that self-care and saying, I'm important. My own health, my own mental health is important as well. And I need to actually focus on that, which is just as important as a lot of the other things that I need to do for my job or for my studies or whatever. Because if I don't take care of myself, then none of the rest of it is really going to work well either.
Yeah. Because if we don't care for ourselves, we lose touch with ourselves and we start making decisions that may not serve us best.
Yeah.
And I say this, but sometimes there are times when I get so busy and I forget about it. I'm like, well, here you go again, going down burnout route and forgetting about self-care.
That's the issue, because, if you don't, it can be a very quick route burnout, because you think, oh, I'm going to pull on all-nighters studying, or, I need to do this and, sleep. Oh, I'll make it up. And then you don't. You eat properly, and you get sick very easily because your immune system is lowered because of the stress and the overwork and stuff. And this doesn't end well. But if you actually focus, you eat properly, you sleep, and these are such simple things, and everybody knows it. But we don't necessarily do it, right? And it's I think it's very important that we have to put our consciousness, and I think that's the thing. We do all of this unconsciously, and I think we need to put our consciousness to work on the self-care and say, okay, what do I really need to do? I need to sleep, I need to eat, and then after that, you can say, well, I'm refreshed now and I can put my full focus on the work that I actually need to do. The second tip is, like forgive yourself for mistakes. That negative self-talk, that this is related, but it's like that forgiveness. You would forgive other people. We're often a lot kinder to other people than we are to ourselves. And, if you want to find joy in your life, you have to actually forgive yourself. And then what did you learn from it? If it was a mistake, how did you learn? How will you not do this again?
So our very, very last question, where can people connect with you and learn more about your work?
Well, I do have a website for my business, Lumina Writing Services, and I believe that you will put that in the episode description. You can contact me at the email that is on the website, or I think you will also provide the email. And I do offer one-to-one coaching and support for writing issues as well as the broader life challenges that you might be struggling with. So I'm happy to talk to you, and then we can discuss if you would like to continue. We can make a plan on how to proceed.
Mm-hmm.
And then listening to my podcast, which is on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, and I'm hoping to put it on YouTube pretty soon as well. And in the near future, I'm going to be offering an event on Eventbrite.
Oh,
yeah.
I will look forward to that. Yes, yes. If you're living in because you're Calgarian right now, living in Calgary, stay tuned up for that. But thank you so much, Rebecca, for appearing on the show today. A big thank you for again sharing your story, for diving into the important but often under-discussed themes of perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and self-rejection. To all the listeners out there, I encourage you to reflect on the advice shared by Rebecca today and remember that rejection is often redirection, as strongly demonstrated by Rebecca's story from transition from oil and gas to psychology, a field she truly loves and enjoys. Rejection is absolutely everywhere. It can often be celebrated for the personal and professional growth it can help us bring, even if it doesn't feel so great in the moment. That said, self-rejection is something that is internal. It is something we do have control over. So do try to watch over that negative self-talk when it appears, and don't let perfectionism and imposter syndrome within you win and take over. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can donate at buymeacoffee.com/Valeria Rusnak. The link for that is in the show notes. You can also follow the podcast on Instagram at _rejectedpremed_podcast for additional content. Also, I'm very happy to announce that I recently launched a Facebook group called The Rejections Room. That's right. That's the title of the Facebook group. Anyone is welcome to join. It's a space where you can support or quietly observe or vent about your rejections anonymously, or maybe even share how they helped you grow. It's non-judgmental, safe space that hopefully helps you feel less alone. The link for that will also be waiting for you in the show notes. And finally, this has been Valeria Rusnak, host and producer of the Rejected Pre-Med podcast. I thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.